Let's let's start as majority of people are here. So first of all, it's my sincere pleasure to welcome you to Translation as a Resistance, an event organized by Ukrainian National Women's League of America as part of Decolonization Month, together with Craft Magazine, Chapter Ukraine, and Academic Studies Press. We call this talk Translation as a Resistance, and I want to be precise about what we mean. We do not mean resistance as a metaphor. We mean it literally. These two books I am about to introduce you to were written by authors who are now serving in the armed forces of Ukraine. They wrote these books before they enlisted, and the books themselves help explain why they enlisted. Translations brought this text into English. Without the act of translation, the resistance this book represents would be locked inside one language, invisible to the world that most needs to hear it. So today, I will introduce two works. Then I will introduce brilliant professionals who made them possible in English, because brilliant books do not have vivid lives without infrastructure. So book number one is Ukrainian Sunrise. Let me start with a question. When do you hear word Donbass? What do you picture? That's probably maybe coal miners, Russian-speaking population that always looked to the Moscow. Dr. Katerina Zarembo, Ukrainian political scientist, argues that the Donbass in your head, in your imagination, was manufactured first by Soviet propagandists in 1930s, then by Kremlin TV after 2014, and lazily reprinted by half of the world's commentaries ever since. In her book, which is called Ukrainian Sunrise, Stories of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions from the early 2000s, it's slim book, only 120 pages, but it reads on one breath. It was published in Ukraine in 2022 by Lviv Publishing House Choven and translated into English in 2024 by Tatiana Savchinska for Academic Studies Press. Its epigraph from Donetsk activist Stanislav Fedorchuk is a moral entry of the book. To pretend that Ukrainian Donbass does not exist is to commit a crime. The argument of the book is structural. A Welsh engineer named John Hux, founded Donetsk, then called Yuzivka, in 1869. Belgian, Austrian, and French companies built the rest. The 1897 Russian imperial census recorded 68% Ukrainian speakers in the region and only 17% Russians. Then came the Holodomor, the purges, and deliberate Soviet effort to flatten the East into one identity, the heavy industry worker. But Zarembo does not just argue, she introduces. She gives you specific people whose names she puts on the record, and it's highly important as majority of them has been already killed in Russians' war against Ukraine. For example, you can read about Yuri Matushchak, a Donetsk student who in 2006 founded a civic organization called Poshtoch and spent 4 years trying to rename his university after the poet Vasil Stus, who had studied there before Soviets killed him in Perm 36 labor camp. The faculty voted Matushek down. In 2014, he went to the war, and he was killed in Ilovaisk encirclement. The university was later evacuated to Vinnytsia and finally renamed for Stus, the name Matushak had fought for. You can read about Lyubov Mikhailova, who in 2010 turned a derelict insulation factory in Donetsk into Izolatia, Ukraine's most ambitious contemporary art center, with 20,000 visitors by a year by 2014. Russian-backed forces seized it on June 9th, 2014, and turned it into what Stanislav Aseyev would later call a concentration camp. Also in this book, you can read about Protestant pastor in Mariupol with 33 adopted children, a Muslim mullah who chose Ukrainian Donetsk over Russian Donetsk, Shakhtar Soccer's ultras guarding pro-European demonstrations during the Revolution of Dignity, two villages where children still recite Kotlяревsky Aeneid, proving Ukrainian was never extinguished in the East, only suppressed. Every single place Zarembo visits for this book, and it was her postdoctoral project that took her 4 years to research. So each single place is now either occupied or in ruins. She did the field work right up to February 2022, and this is the last available portrait of a civil society that the world is being told never existed. The exact story Russia uses to justify so-called liberation. And who is Katerina Zarembo? She deserves us to talk a bit here about her. She holds PhD in political science. She was the deputy director of Kyiv leading foreign policy think tank. She taught at Dartmouth and Central European University. She translated Tony Judd's post-war into Ukrainian. In August 2024, she joined Hospitaller Medical Battalion as a combat medic. And after watching Donald Trump's second inauguration in January 2025, she decided, in her own words, that, quote, the future of Ukraine is in the hands of Ukrainian army, and that's why I have to be part of this community, not just a volunteer. So in July 2025, she formally enlisted the armed forces of Ukraine. She wrote a book of light about east of Ukraine. Now she is evacuating wounded soldiers there. The second book I would like to introduce begins where the first one ends, with a writer who crossed a line from words to action. So the book number 2 is War from the Rear by Andrei Lyubka. On February 24, 2022, one of Ukrainian most celebrated novelists woke up to missiles and made a decision. He would stop writing. Instead, he would buy cars. Over the next 2.5 years, Andrei Lyubka and his volunteer team raised over $1.5 million and personally drove more than 4,000 used Jeeps and SUVs to soldiers on the front line, from Donbass to Zaporizhia to Kherson. And he actually wrote a book about it, and then he enlisted. War from the Rear is a collection of essays that reads like non-fiction road movie. Lyubka is a poet and novelist from Transcarpathia, the very western tip of Ukraine that became logistic hub. And the book follows him as he sources beaten up vehicles across Europe, drives them across country, and delivers them to brigades under fire. But the vehicles are just the frame. What fills the frame are people. Soccer players, people from coffee roasters, Baptist pastors and Roma communities, refugees, soldiers, an entire society that does not want to wait for its government to tell them what to do and how to help. 3 scenes define the book's tone. First, Lyubka and his crew prank a famous Ukrainian soccer player into believing he has to transport the body of a fallen soldier. The scene is actually hilarious. Lubka submitted it to Australian literary magazine. They commissioned it, translated, paid him, and refused to publish it. Uh, People there won't understand it, they said. And this gap between what Ukrainians live and what outside world is ready to hear is the book's engine. Second, Lubka is a lifelong atheist, spends weeks working alongside with Baptist volunteers and discover that the war became a point of reset for entire state because people who were never spoken to each other are now sharing a van and a mission. Third, the smell of fleshy roasted coffee reaching a soldier in a trench. And for 30 seconds, the war disappears. This is not a traumatic narrative. Lubka deliberately set out to write, and I want you to hear this. It can be treated as a Ukrainian book with happy ending, something almost unheard of in Ukrainian literary tradition and war writing. Charlotte Higgins, editor-in-chief of The Guardian, called it unexpected and profoundly humane. In January 2026, Lubka announced he was enlisting. The war continues, he wrote, and it's time to be not only formed for armed forces, but in our armed forces. So, by the way, for all of our participants, if you want to get this book, you will get special discount code. So it will be more affordable and easier to get it and to read it, of course. And these two books exist in English because of the people who you are about to hear from. So let me introduce them. We'll hear today Tatiana Savchinska, who is a translator of Ukrainian Sunrise. She holds MA in Comparative Literature for Dartmouth College, where she studied on a Fulbright scholarship. Her translations have appeared in Los Angeles Book Review, as the London Ukrainian Review, and her work on Ukrainian Sunrise was awarded Peterson Translated Book Award. We'll hear Kate Surkan, who is a reporter at Kyiv Independent, co-translator of War from the Rare, award-winning translator of such authors as Miroslav Layuk, Христина Венгренюк, Andrei Lubka. We have a pleasure to have here Teresa Pierce, who is translation editor at Ukrainska Pravda. After many years as Russian to English translator, Teresa began learning Ukrainian in March 2022 and has worked with Ukrainska Pravda team nearly every day since, editing translations of daily news, long reads, and videos. She also collaborated on Ukrainian Sunrise. We have an honor to have Katerina Kazimirova, who is a cultural manager and editor-in-chief of Craft magazine. She created Chapter Ukraine, a platform mapping translated Ukrainian books globally, and leads the Razum for Ukraine literature program, building long-term infrastructure for Ukrainian literature in English-speaking worlds. The last, but definitely not the least, is Anna Patelina, who did great effort in organizing this event and serves as the National Education Chair at Ukrainian National Women's League of America and is library assistant at Syracuse Public Library. So finally, now let's hear from them. We will start our conversation with the translator's voice, how the work of translator might be treated as resistance, what our translators put into their understanding of translation as a resistance, and what challenges they are facing, because both books are deeply rooted in specific Ukrainian places. Donetsk civil underground, Transcarpathian volunteers road, and probably there are a lot of hard things to carry out across into English, the humor, the geography, the emotional register. So let's start with Tatiana Savchinska, as we started from Ukrainian Sunrise, to continue our discussion. So Tatiana, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria, for this wonderful introduction. Yeah, and I'd like to start with just how this translation project came about. And I had started thinking about translating Katrina's book into English from the moment I read it in Ukrainian, which was in January 2023. And I've contacted Katerina right away to ask about the English language rights and then for permission to put together a book proposal. And the same year in March, I was fortunate to participate in the London Book Fair, and among other things, I was hoping I'll be able to pitch Katrina's book to publishers or perhaps find an agent for her. And at the book fair, I had met in person with Emma Sharcliffe, a literary agent who represents many Ukrainian authors. And until then, I had only emailed with her. So this was the first time we met in person. And at that point, we were finalizing my translation of Alexander Mehet's I'll Mix Your Blood with Coal, and Emma represents Alexander as well. And the book came out in Northwestern University Press in the US. So while being interested in Katerina's book, Emma couldn't help me place it because she had just placed Alexander's book, and she found them similar. Although while they explore similar topics, I do think that they're quite different in nature, and they cover different time periods. So something that really has stayed with me is how during one of the panels at the book fair, Emma mentioned that she is a really well-known literary agent, has trouble placing Ukrainian books with Anglophone publishers, and that their attention was increasingly fading. And while there had been an uptick in interest in Ukrainian literature in February and March 2022, it was increasingly difficult to find a publisher willing to publish a book by a Ukrainian author and promote it. And she said that some publishers even mentioned they didn't want to publish a Ukrainian author out of fear that it would look like they were jumping on bandwagon. And after returning from London, I continued pitching Katrina's book to publishers I had made contact with in London and elsewhere, but to no avail. I received over a dozen rejections before Academic Studies Press took up the book. And I'm very grateful that this wonderful book ended up in such caring hands. And it looking back in retrospect, I can't believe how long it took for us to find a publisher, given that I personally believe that this has nothing to do with the quality of the book itself. I strongly believe that Katrina's book offers this really hard to find combination of rigorous research and this beautiful, captivating writing. And I think this situation that I just described really testifies to how difficult it is for a Ukrainian book, regardless of its literary quality, to reach the Anglophone audience. And in this context, all of us who work with Ukrainian literature, translators, editors, illustrators, publishers, librarians, we all become agents of translation. And in a sense, we all need to do, and we very often do this extra work of not just getting Ukrainian literature across to the Anglophone market, to the Anglophone audience, but also when we do the extra work of promoting Ukrainian literature on all possible platforms. And unfortunately, Ukrainian literature is not an exception in this scenario, and it's not just us. This is the case with many so-called small or underrepresented languages and literatures. And I think a good example of literature gaining wide representation in English is our neighboring country, Poland. And I've been following their literary process and how their books, and especially their translated books, are represented for a long time. And I've noticed that sustained state funding is really made a huge difference in how the the Polish literary scene is represented abroad, and this is not just the number of books that are translated, but how widely read they are, how often they're nominated for different book prizes, how often they win those prizes, how big their booths are at book fairs. So all of these things, they count, and in the long term they make a huge difference. But again, as I mentioned, a lot of this depends on state funding. And we all realize that while there are things we can learn from countries like Poland in how we promote books in translation, for obvious reasons, we can't follow their example because we are fighting an existential war and state funding is scarce. And I am humble and grateful that the publication of Katerina's book was funded by the Ukrainian Book Institute in such difficult times. And this again shows that we are doing what we can, but unfortunately, since the need to promote Ukrainian literature is pressing and is a lot bigger than what state institutions can take care of right now. All of us who are involved with Ukrainian literature, translators, publishers, editors, we all need to become these agents of translation who will be working on promoting Ukrainian authors and just getting readers interested in reading Ukrainian works. I believe that Ukraine is a treasure trove of stories, and it is our responsibility as translators and agents of translation to get these stories across to the English-speaking audience. Even when there are bumps on the road, like like I had with Katerina's book, I feel like these challenging circumstances, they make the process and the end result even more rewarding. And it has been it's been challenging to work on Katerina's book, primarily because while I am very grateful that we had this funding from the Ukrainian Book Institute, we did have a very, very tight deadline. And I had to work on this translation. I had to complete it in just a couple of months. And it just happened that this was the particular period when we had power outages that were the longest. And I still have this picture somewhere on my phone where I'm sitting on my laptop and translating Katerina's book by candlelight. So I hope that things like that will stay in the past and that we won't have to work under such conditions for much longer. But because of all of these things, it was quite difficult to complete the translation on time, and I wouldn't be able to do it without Teresa's help. And because I felt that we had to move so quickly, and I couldn't go through the translation as many times as I would have liked, just knowing that she'll be rereading my translation and that I have an extra pair of eyes and I know how attentive and careful she is with all the texts she works on. And this has been extremely helpful to me. And I think it really made a difference in what this book looks like in the end. And again, this testifies to how much of our work is teamwork. And it's I feel like sometimes translators are seen as these, solitary monks that just sit in their caves, working on their laptops, especially when the deadline is near, without seeing the light of day, which is true sometimes. But I feel like in order to not just to publish a book by a Ukrainian author in English, but to really make this publication a great one and to make sure that readers on the other side of the world know about this book and that they read it. It takes a village. It takes all different people involved in this process. And it's just something that I want to emphasize is how much not just us as translators, we are resistant this cultural erasure, but all of us who are acting as agents of translation, all of us who work on promoting Ukrainian literature in English and in other languages. And I do believe that this is something that perhaps it's difficult to see the results of our work right away. But in the long term, I am sure that more and more people will discover Ukrainian literature. And then for all of us, I can promise that we'll have not as much work, but I'm sure that when it will be just Ukrainian literature will be part of mental map of readers worldwide, and at this point, we'll have to face just not as many obstacles trying to get Ukrainian authors out in English and other languages. And hopefully, once the war is over, again, we can get more state support for programs like Translate Ukraine that already we've seen such a big difference in the number of books that are available worldwide, Ukrainian authors and Ukrainian books that are being translated into so many different languages and not just the major European ones. And just our work together is really, I feel like it's really making a difference, making a difference in how visible Ukrainian literature becomes on world stage. And I feel that with the literary cultural heritage that Ukraine has, it is one of the most joyful things, even it is quite difficult sometimes to show that to the world. It's just how much Ukraine has to offer in our literature. It didn't appear in February 2022, but we have a long and beautiful and just really, I think, we have our literary tradition is something that is truly part of bigger European literary tradition, and the more translators or translations of both contemporary and classic Ukrainian works appear out there, the more clear it will become that Ukrainian literature is part of European literature, and that's something that we will never have to question again. Thank you.
Diana, thank you so much for your work and crucial points. I sincerely admire Ukrainian translators and how they manage to work in these circumstances. And I wonder, Kate, what was your experience with bringing Ukrainian literature to the world?
Thank you, Maria, for your question, and Tatiana for your wonderful answer before me. I just want to say, when it comes to translating Andrei's book, we had kind of a heartwarming story with Yulia Lubka, my co-translator and the wife of Andrei, because it started that Yulia, who is always the lead on our co-projects, was starting to translate the essays of this collection after the birth of her second daughter. Yarina, and I was joining in on the editing process when I was very pregnant with my daughter. So we were working on this, despite this kind of family obligations and, staying up late after kids went to bed, because we really believed in this essay collection and in showing Andrei's work to the world. And as you pointed out, there's a very kind of special humor in his work. I think that readers of Milan Kundera can see the influence that he exerts over Andrei's writing, because there is similarly this kind of ironic and light, almost musical tone to the work, but also deeply philosophical in nature. And we were trying to place some of the essays in magazines, like this Australian publication that you mentioned. They did publish the essay about how coffee helps soldiers have that 1 minute of feeling, normal. But as you said, they were a bit frightened by the essay about pranking the famous soccer player. So it's a bit of a challenge when you have to share this kind of wartime humor and irony, because a lot of it is very dark humor and foreigners don't understand it. Foreigners don't understand that people can have fun and relax during wartime. But this makes the responsibility to translate such works and to tell such stories all the more imperative. And for this reason, I'm very thankful that Academic Studies Press gave the translation a home. It's also kind of a very interesting documentation of these first 2 years of Andri's volunteering work, because he was still doing literature at this time, not at the scale that he did before the full-scale war, but in the book he describes, fighting against this exhaustion of still doing, cultural diplomacy trips abroad, taking a nap in the airport. I believe it was in Vienna, before going on to a trip to another cultural event. And this is because cultural diplomacy for him was still very important, and that he had a role to play in this. And just to think that he was also organizing this increasingly growing volunteering operation is just absolutely incredible. And as you pointed out, he sent over 415 cars to the front line. Many of those he helped to transport himself. He even, if we speak of dark humor, there was another a very interesting moment in the book where he describes one of the first trips where he and fellow volunteers go to take a picture next to the road sign, and one of the soldiers listens to this story later and says, "Are you guys crazy? That place could have been mined." So it's very interesting documentation of a very specific moment in a Ukrainian volunteer's life. I think because of the specificity of this moment, it also makes it difficult to sell to foreign publishers. But I think that we need to, as translators, think of ways to maybe market this better and to show that they should not be afraid of such things, that actually it's very important to tell such, because there's such a huge amount of stories, and it is really the most documented war in history, that we should really try and gravitate towards such documentations of specific moments of specific people as much as possible. Now, Andriy, as you pointed out, since January has been serving in the armed forces of Ukraine. He is writing, unfortunately, much less, but he is still essay writing. Andriy is multi-talented. He writes not only poetry, I believe, was more in his early career. I don't think he's writing poetry now, but prose, fiction prose, non-fiction, translations, and I would say all of it is very good, but he truly excels at essay writing. And if you read his Patreon, if you are subscribed to his Patreon, you may see the essays that he has been able to write since he started his military service, and they're also quite interesting. It's about like basic training, this feeling of loneliness, but also not regretting his decision to serve in the army. Why he chose, after 4 years of nonstop volunteering, to enlist in the armed forces. And we just published this in Yulia's translation on the Kyiv Independence website, a shortened version of this. So you may recommend it to your foreign friends who don't know Ukrainian to check it out. So yes, I'm hoping that we will expect a essay collection when Andriy completes his military service, about his experience, as well as hopefully many novels too.
Kate, thank you so much for your work and this talk. Indeed, I like the point how each of speakers highlighted how collaborative nature changed a lot of things, and we all know that good copy editing plays crucial role in translation. So I would like to ask Teresa to talk about her experience. How does it feel to be this mediator between two realities? How challenging is that to think what on the target language won't sound good? How challenging is that to find appropriate words, metaphors, and how your works look like?
Thank you so much, Maria. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here. I met Tanya 2 years ago at the Translating Ukraine Summer Institute in Wrocław, and we worked together on Ukrainian Sunrise, which is an absolutely fascinating book, and also Transit Culture by Tamara Hundarova. Um, this one. And Kate, I've really enjoyed reading War from the Rear. I read Explaining Ukraine every week. In the book, Andrei Lubka is very honest about Orientalism. He describes how he'd followed the wars in Syria and Yugoslavia very closely, and he always thought that war was the sort of thing that happens over there. And I suppose we all think that. We all start where we are. Over the last 4 years, I've read a lot about Ukraine in the war, but even so, the part of this book I could imagine best was when he describes the experience of a Ukrainian refugee staying with an English family, because it was so easy for me to picture those people and their home, and they turned out to be not very nice people, sadly. But anyway, reading is entering into someone else's world. And it always requires a leap of imagination, even if that person's circumstances are quite similar to yours, but even more so if that person lives in another country and speaks a different language. So what I aim to do in my work is to help other Anglophone readers to make that leap into understanding Ukraine a bit better by making pieces of writing written by Ukrainians as clear and engaging and accessible to them as possible without dumbing down. People commonly think that an editor is just there to fix mistakes. And of course, we do that, but really, I'm trying to make the writing powerful, to have impact, to have the same impact that it has in the original, so that English-speaking readers can have the same experience as a Ukrainian reader, or as near to that as we can do. So translation is a balancing act. We have to be anchored in the original text. This is translation, it's not creative writing. These are not our thoughts. We're telling someone else's story, so we're anchored in the original. But we also need to detach ourselves from the original, paradoxically, because this has to be a piece of writing that works in the target language, English. And that is where a native English speaker editor can really contribute to the translation process. As mentioned, I studied Russian at university, and I had been working as a translator for over 20 years when the full-scale invasion began. And I edited a lot of translations, and I really wanted to do something to help Ukraine. I knew I could be useful because of the asymmetry we have in the translation profession. So I happen to have been born a native speaker of the global lingua franca, and I only work into my native language. No one wants me to do it the other way around. So I joined Ukrainska Pravda in March 2022 as a volunteer. It was all hands on deck because the English section was totally new, and I started learning Ukrainian, and I've worked for them almost every day since then. I highly recommend you check out Ukrainska Pravda in English if you haven't. We have a lot of interesting stories there. And it was a steep learning curve for everyone. I've only been to Ukraine once, and it was in 1991 when I was a student in the Soviet Union. And then I only went to Kiev, and I knew nothing about weapons or military stuff. But fortunately, we have another editor who is absolutely brilliant at that. But I did know about the art of translation. And very broadly, you could say that translation has two components. We don't experience it this way when we're doing it, but it's figuring out what the original means and figuring out how to express that in the target language. And as an editor, the translator has done the first bit for me. I don't have to hack through the Ukrainian to work out what it means, though I do still read the original as well. And then I can make suggestions to the translator, and we can have a discussion. As people have mentioned, it's a collaborative process, which is wonderful. So the editor is first and foremost a reader, an extra pair of eyes, and any published writer will have their work edited. Somebody else will always spot things that you haven't seen. But most of my work is editing translations done by native speakers of Ukrainian. I'm not saying that you must always have one. At Ukrainska Pravda, our colleagues do plenty of reports without us. So I look for the news items that are the most challenging, for example, about law, because our legal systems are fundamentally different, diplomacy, religion, which is always complicated, or human interest articles where the language is going to be more colloquial. But for literary and academic translation, which is going to be published, editing is absolutely essential because the Ukrainian writer has taken great thought and care over their work, and we have to as well. I think an editor should read everything at least twice, to go through slowly and carefully checking against the original, and then secondly, to step away from the original and read through the whole text as if it were not a translation to make sure that the writing flows and get rid of any clunkiness. And ideally, I like to go to sleep and read through it a third time the next day, but I definitely did not have time to do that with Ukrainian Sunrise because the deadlines were absolutely punishing. So there are so many tiny differences between our two languages, and some of them might seem trivial, even microscopic, like punctuation, prepositions. But if we have a lot of teeny tiny things that are slightly off, like Ukrainian punctuation, prepositions, tenses, calques, articles, word order, sprinkled through a piece of writing, they add up and it has a cumulative effect to make English readers feel this writing is a bit hard to understand. It seems far away, it seems foreign, and the editor, what I want to do is bring Ukraine closer. So it's not really about fixing mistakes, but making the writing clear, compelling, engaging, accessible to our readers. Um, because there's a lot of competition out there. We know that fewer people are reading books. There are a lot of books people can read. If someone picks up your book, you want them to keep reading. If someone clicks on your news story, you want them to keep reading. So we need writing that is going to do that writer, translations that are going to do that writer justice. So the editor must be someone who reads constantly themselves in English and who cares about Ukraine and cares about good writing. So the challenges of specifically Ukrainian to English translation, we could divide them into three types: lexical, which is to do with individual words, and syntactic, which is to do with grammar, and cultural. On a lexical level, there are so many false friends, words that look similar in both languages but have different meanings. For example, a fragment is really, really tiny in English. It's not a big chunk of missile, and it's only a physical thing. A cottage is a very small house in the country, not a mansion that someone wealthy might be building for money laundering purposes. It's not all false friends. For example, Ukraine is not going to return Crimea because return means give back. It will take back Crimea. It's not going to return prisoners of war. It's going to bring them home. Is ruka a hand or an arm? We have to find out or guess because English makes us choose. We try not to use, we try to keep the language international because, of course, we have different kinds of English. At least you have to pick one for the spelling, and Ukraińska Pravda has picked British English, but we don't want to use any words or expressions that are going to annoy Americans or puzzle them. So sometimes you need to think of compromises. So I might as well address the issue of AI now. I mentioned that I haven't lived in Ukraine. Well, AI has not experienced anything and it doesn't understand anything and it has no common sense. So personally, I don't touch it with a barge pole. And I remember once I knew the translator had used AI. The article randomly mentioned the CIA. There was nothing about the CIA in the original. It was an AI translation of the agency, which in this particular piece of news turned out to be Bloomberg, a news agency. This is the kind of thing that AI will do. Anyway, so that's lexical issues are relatively simple to sort out, but things get a bit more complicated at sentence level because we don't translate word for word, but sense for sense. And English and Ukrainian are structured very differently, the way that they convey the relationships between the words. If I could pick out three issues that are always going to be very challenging, they would be tenses, articles, and word order, because English has a very complicated tense system, just as I will never understand how to use the perfective and imperfective correctly. In English, the wrong tense can make something sound as if it happened a long time ago when it didn't, or when it's no longer the case when it is, or the events happened in a different order. And the second issue I point out is articles, of course, because Ukrainian doesn't have them, and they mostly depend on context. And they help us in Anglophones to orient ourselves in the text, and Ukrainian has other ways of doing that. So if you say, for example, a man, is that the same man that we mentioned earlier in the text, or is it a different man? It's the same man, it's going to be the man. and so on and so forth. And so you have to understand the subject matter to get this right. So AI often gets this wrong. AI will just think, this is a possible sentence in English. I've seen this tense before in similar texts, so it must be okay. Yes, it is a possible sentence in English, but it doesn't mean the same as the Ukrainian in this context. Anyway, so third thing, word order. So because English has very few endings, inflections, word order is really important to show the relationship between words, and it can really change the emphasis. One thing I notice a lot in the news is that in English, we tend to put the most important thing in the sentence first, and Ukrainian tends to build up to it as a generalization. So a news item might begin on the 19th of March in Zaporizhia, the Russians attacked with drones, killing 3 and injuring 9. This is a real sentence, by the way. So it's time, place, action, result. If you put that in English, it's not wrong, but it would be more usual to put it the other way around and say 3 people were killed and 9 injured in a Russian drone attack on Zaporizhia on the 19th of March. So the people are first. If you give readers the structure they're used to, they can take in the information more easily. Thirdly, I know I'm going on a bit, cultural differences. So the original will see things from the Ukrainian perspective, obviously, and our readers have a totally different perspective, and sometimes they need a bit of extra help. Things about Ukraine that Anglophone people don't know about, I like to incorporate an explanation seamlessly in the text. In an academic work, you would be able to use footnotes. So it could be traditions, holidays, references to famous people or historical events that aren't well known outside Ukraine, literary references, aspects of everyday life that are different, public transport, apps, memes, I could go on. Even time can be different. When is, for example, when is or was the night of 14th of May? I think for you it was in Ukrainian, it was last night. For us, it hasn't happened yet. It's tonight. So we have to say the night of the 13th to 14th of May. Winter 2026 hasn't happened yet either. When there was talk of an Easter truce on the 12th of April, for us, Easter had already happened because, of course, we were talking about Orthodox Easter. So many different interesting bits and pieces. And when you have a translation of a personal story, like tributes to people who've died or people telling their own stories, the style of the translation can often seem formal and stilted. And I think that's partly because a lot of translation work is quite formal and official, and translators get used to that. And we get something more colloquial that needs to be just loosened up a bit to make the people sound human. For example, in Ukrainian, it's perfectly fine to say the man or the woman as a kind of pronoun, but it sounds a bit cold in English. One example I liked was Trump wished Orban victory by a large margin, which is not wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it's formal. What Trump actually said was, I hope he'll win big. And we all know how that turned out. I firmly believe that translation should not be a solitary activity. People and native speakers of both languages working together on translation, asking each other questions, throwing out ideas, discussing them will produce better result, because language is incredibly complex. And the more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know. So some involvement from a native speaker is crucial for literary translation, and not just any old person, but somebody who questions everything, reads constantly, who has a sharp eye and a heart, who cares about Ukraine and the Ukrainian language. So finally, the reason I want to talk about balance is because you ask whether I see translation as a resistance, and for me, it's more about restoring a balance. We've heard a lot from Russia over the years. It's been very culturally dominant. People haven't had the chance to encounter Ukrainian literature, and now that's changing. It's hard for me to talk about resistance because I have the privilege of living in peace. My country is not defending itself. We're not under attack. We're not having to fight for our freedom and very existence. My husband isn't on the front line. And also, I don't even have to resist against my own country, because helping Ukraine isn't an issue in the UK. I've never met anyone who thinks we're spending too much money in Ukraine, and the governments of both parties have been very clear that supporting Ukraine is a priority, and that's clearly different in the United States, sadly, at the moment. So for me personally, I find it hard to speak of resistance, but I can completely see that it is for you. We know that Russia is waging an information war. People are now starting to hear more from Ukraine. It is changing. It's up to us to be part of that change, to represent and amplify Ukrainian voices around the world. Thank you.
Teresa, thank you so much. We have a comment from our audience that points you covered are fascinating, and we're so deeply grateful for your work and professionalism. It's a pleasure to know you and work with you. We're
Thank you.
also supposed to have today Maria Kinovich, a award-winning illustrator who, because covers and illustration, it's separate story and separate role in book production. But as Maria is sick and we wish her fast recovery, we're going to absolutely important topic, often very neglected. Doing translation is enormous work, but just releasing the book might mean the book won't find a reader. And luckily, recent years, we have more platforms that are gathering information about the Ukrainian translation or promoting and making amazing content in English. So we today will listen Katerina Kazimirova, and we hope to know more how Chapter Ukraine and Craft Magazine are working, what they are doing, challenges, and learn more about crucial role of promotion and spreading the word about translated works.
Thank you so much, Maria. Hello, everyone. It's such a great conversation we're having today. So insightful. I hope we'll have recorded. I want to listen it again and again. So many really important points raised. And again, my appreciation and admiration to translators, because first of all, yeah, it's like a first step at all to be for Ukrainian literature be seen, but also our translators not only play the one role of translators, but it's always agents and main agents for Ukrainian literature. For now, we have like, yeah, professional two agents who work in with Ukrainian literature, but we have translators who always was there first all the time. So just wanna, while I have this opportunity just to say to Kate and Tatiana how much I admire your work. So what I am doing actually within all the organization and projects I'm involved, the end goal is bringing Ukrainian literature to the global audiences by different methodologies, by different, okay, I see you can't see me. Yeah, sorry, I'm here. Yeah. Different tools, and within different organizations, we're doing it differently. So Craft Magazine is basically a media with interviews. Actually, I have right here with me now our first print editions, interview with our creative personality of Ukraine. Again, show you guys. We're now here in Lviv and Lviv Media Forum presenting actually our product to international audiences. So it's gonna be new audience to our books. Within chapter Ukraine, the main goal was address probably the first challenge is visibility. The first challenge for Ukrainian literature, because if we're talking about translations, the number of translations growing each year. Thankfully, we have translators and programs supporting translations, institutions, but problem of visibility of this book still remains. Mostly because we have our translated books published by small independent publishers, but not necessarily and not always have infrastructure for promotion and yeah, other reasons. So Chapter Ukraine mapping all the existing today translations the English. So we have French, German, Spanish version, and now recently we started working on Portuguese, Polish, Czech, and Swedish language. We'll add, but of course, still main one in my work. It's English language version. So first of all, it's just a base where all the translation collected, but the main functionality and main function of this platform, of this tool, it's actually become a tool of advocacy for our audience, for audience who already know Ukrainian literature and want to be an agent of this literature, not CA, but who knows. And you can just go to this website. If Maria can please share
I already
in a
got
chat
it.
this website. Oh, thank you. So you can go to this website, create your list of titles, and save it and use it later, or share it right there using the website and send this list to the local bookstore or your library. We launched this project in October. And as for today, we have more than 2,000 lists shared, of course, mostly with the help of UNWLA, who became our partner on this project, but also our network of volunteers using the same website and doing outreach to local libraries and bookstores here within the United States, because I'm based in the United States right now, and our geography is mostly in the United States. So this is what we're doing within a chapter Ukraine. Also, our kind of this grassroots organization team, we are trying to build our base of bloggers and actually succeeding in this. It's challenging and taking more time than we expected, but it's also just consistent, direct outreach to people, influencers and bloggers who doing their content in literature. Just some insights to share, and actually it's kind of both. It's about libraries, bookstores, and also about influencers. We found that it's much easier to pitch one exact book for thematic list. For example, each library has a display, thematic display every month. And it's harder for us to pitch, create Ukrainian shelf because most of public libraries have a policy not to do particular display on country. I mean, Anna will tell you more about this, more about work with library, but it's also part of what we're doing. So I'll just briefly mention this. But it was super easy for us to add particular book with particular topic to the list. For example, now in US this month it's a national immigration month, and so we could add novels about this experience. So it's like Women in Translation month. It's poetry month. So. Libraries gladly adding our recommendations. So we're kind of doing their job for them, adding new, interesting literature topics. With bookstores, it's a little bit, it's much more challenging because bookstores, it's mostly about commercial success. It's about selling books, not just displaying and working in the community. With the bookstores, we are finding bookstores with book clubs and pitching books there. We're creating all the guidelines, we're creating all the discussions guides, parallel some marketing materials they can use, and some of the bookstores also working with us on that. So this is just continuous work, consistent, and I guess we all can be part of this project, part of this resistance. And this is what we're doing within Chapter Ukraine. My role in Razum for Ukraine organization, I just recently joined this team, but they've been doing great work even before. First of all, it's translations grants. So we mentioned today Book Institute, also House of Europe translation grants exists, and Peterson Prize, yes. What special about RASM that we can support longer term projects. For example, yes, 1 year timeline sometimes is super challenging for publishers, especially for bigger publishers. Just it's not enough time to complete the book. So RASM can support longer term and bigger projects which require more time, more resources. Also, what's unique about us that we are since this year supporting promotion and editing. So not just production in terms of translation, but also editing work and for to reach Anglophone market, yeah, most successfully, just what Teresa talking about, and separate grants for promotion. And when at all I'm talking about promotion is general, it's less about some specific PR and marketing campaign, but it's mostly about building ecosystem where Ukrainian literature can exist. And also we need to remember that Ukrainian literature is translated literature, and the market of translated literature in general much smaller than so in US it's what still 3% of literature is translated literature. So it's challenging to get to Anglophone market, not just to Ukrainian literature and for all the non-English, non-American literature. But where other translated literature succeeded, it's where they had this functioning ecosystem of agents, translators, editors, interested publishers, and of course readership communities. And it's what we are strongly encouraging to do. Our today audience is just join resistance. Just go to our website. You can, if you have several hours per week work on your library or on your bookstore, just like if you already adopt your library or your bookstore, we can share with you more materials and our success stories already how we did this. Again, it's easier, not easier, it's simple. It's just persistence and it's just targeted approach, not just in general, please support Ukrainian literature or please buy more titles. It's exactly what kind of titles for what kind of topics, when it's needed, what kind of program and what kind of support we can also offer those communities who can, for example, who want to host some event on Ukrainian literature. And good news that interest in American publisher also is growing. So first of all, who already published once Ukrainian books and successfully publishing again, and new publisher starting signing contracts for translation and for publishing new books, and even several major publishing houses soon will be releasing Ukrainian novels. And we, of course, hoping for this breakthrough, and we, of course, hoping for long lists and short lists in main literature awards. This is actually what we need to aim where, and we need to put all our attention. And even now when we're supporting publishers, we ask them precisely and even provide with a list of necessary awards to nominate this book. Yeah, it's sometimes it of course can be time consuming, but it's like first priority publishers need to do. And we all need to support also this. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I will not hold you more.
Katarina, it was so insightful and priceless. Can't agree more on ecosystem. And it's amazing to have all of these platforms. I highly encourage to go to the link and you will see how stylish these platforms look like. And we have comment from Oksana that her library has shelf of Russian books and also Spanish shelf. So it's definitely a good idea to suggest having Ukrainian shelf if they are having. that. And we're deepening our expertise in ecosystem, and libraries are playing crucial role in it here, but we often might not think how many options, opportunities are there, because unfortunately these days libraries are not so sexy as social media, but they actually are. And Anna, it's my pleasure to give word to you, and also to say thank you one more time for initiating this event and doing so much for making it happen. And we would love to learn more about libraries and your work there.
Thank you, Maria. And I really want to thank you and Academic Studies Press for collaborating with us on this really very important and needed initiative. I'm really honored to be here, and I'll be speaking about how we use public libraries as a space for cultural and educational advocacy. But before that, I'd like to say that I couldn't stop thinking that today's event is making a very strong statement, given that last night Russia shot over 1,500 drones over Ukraine, targeting civilian infrastructure and killing people. And I mean, look at these women today who are speaking with us. I mean, they didn't get any sleep at all. They got up, they dressed up, they showed up, and they keep powering through. And it just shows us that resistance, like this event today, translation as resistance, it's both not only a literally act, but also a physical reality. And I would like to proceed with my slides. So as I said, I'm going to be speaking about how we use public libraries as a space for cultural and educational advocacy. And I would like to say that these collaborations with public libraries intensified after the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, as there arose urgent need to correct misconceptions about Ukrainian culture and literature, especially through authentic Ukrainian voices and perspectives. Anya, I'd like to ask you to move on to slide number 2. I think that's no. Scroll up. Yeah. I think this one, right? So why this work matters? We all know that libraries are one of the few places in the United States that are free, that are trusted, and that are open to everyone. And they shape what people read and how they understand the world. Right now, unfortunately, Ukrainian voices are still not widely available in many library systems. And that matters because if people don't see Ukraine represented, they rely on headlines or incomplete narratives. But books help fill the gap in a deeper and more lasting way. Next slide, please. So what started as individual efforts across branches, because UNWLA has a national coverage, and we have more than 60 branches across the United States. So what started as individual efforts across branches is now becoming an organized initiative. Our goal is very simple: get more Ukrainian books into public libraries across the United States in different languages: Ukrainian, English, bilingual, for all age groups, kids, teens, adults, and across various genres, not just history or war, but also fiction, mysteries, contemporary voices, poetry, LGBTQI, and more. Next slide, please. So when we approach libraries, we build relationships. We work directly with librarians, and we try to understand their needs. We also help simplify the process. We provide book lists, we suggest titles, we also connect them with vendors. And most importantly, we try to match books with what their community will actually read. Next slide, please. So, as I said, our approach is very practical and relationship based, and we collaborate closely with librarians on book selection and programming. We often offer curated book lists, vendor connections, and advocacy because we explain why these books matter. We also focus on relevance. We recommend books that fit the community and are likely to be read. And this often grows into broader collaboration like cultural programs, story times, exhibits, book displays, book clubs for both children and adults. In some cases, this becomes ongoing programming and long-term partnerships. And behind the scenes, we continue building and updating curated lists. We continue recommending accessible titles. We also help libraries source books and guide them toward the titles that are more likely to circulate and be used. We can stay on this slide. So getting books into libraries is only half the work, but if they're not visible, they won't be read. So we focus on displays, newsletters, social media influencers, like working with influencers and traditional media. We also try to connect Ukrainian books to themes that American readers already relate to. Next slide, please, Anya. So one of the components involved was working with literary experts to create curated recommendation pairings. So basically matching books by Ukrainian authors in English translation with stylistically or thematically similar works by well-known American or European writers with the goal to highlight the depth of Ukraine's literary tradition and its relevance to American readers. Like, for example, if you like Susan Sontag regarding the pain of others, you might enjoy Victoria Amelina's Looking at Women, Looking at War. We can move on to the next slide. So this is one example of how it works in practice. As Maria mentioned, I am also a part-time library assistant at the Secaucus Public Library. And how it all started, I built a relationship with this library by being invited to speak about Ukrainian culture in times of war, in terms of the multicultural book fair that they had at the time. So from there, I introduced Ukrainian books. I donated some of the titles, and I also helped source other titles by providing curated lists. Then I focused on engagement, organizing events, organizing outreach, doing promotion on social media, and doing monthly displays. So the key takeaway here is once the relationship is there, the rest builds naturally. Next slide, please. So this slide is one of my favorites. One of the biggest challenges has been that a lot of this work started off pretty scattered because different branches were doing these great things, but not always connected to each other. So we began adding more structure. We put together shared toolkits with practical guidance. And we also started creating a more coordinated approach across branches. We also partner with Chapter Ukraine to simplify how we recommend books to libraries. At the same time, we have been building reader engagements. We run a UNWLA book club that focuses on Ukrainian titles in English translation. We also invite American guest speakers to our book sessions, and they help us broaden the conversations and highlight why Ukrainian literature is meaningful, universal, and relevant for American readers. Last year, we launched a Ukrainian book challenge to encourage more people to read and engage with these books. We partnered for this campaign. We partnered with Harvard's Ukrainian Research Institute and the Hukas Foundation. And we launched this social media campaign encouraging readers to buy at least one book in English about Ukraine or by a Ukrainian author. And historian Timothy Snyder endorsed this campaign. And he said that every book sold is a vote for Ukrainian culture. So participants, when they buy a book, they take a photo or a video with this book, then they share it on social media, and they use the tag Ukrainian Book Challenge. And they also try to challenge 5 friends to do the same. Publishing Ukrainian books in English translation remains a fragile effort, and we've heard a lot about that. And this initiative builds visible demand so publishers can keep saying yes to Ukrainian voices. So our goal is to make Ukrainian literature feel accessible and relevant to American readers. At the same time, we're linking each title to meaningful cultural moments in Ukraine. And all of this helps connect the work in libraries with real interest from readers. Next slide, please. So we are starting to see real progress. Ukrainian books are appearing in libraries across different states. Some libraries run regular Ukrainian programming. We can see new partnerships forming. And most importantly, when books are visible, people actually go and pick them up. Next slide, please. We do, of course, have a few challenges, and some of them are that libraries have very different levels of resources. Sometimes budgets are tight, especially for foreign language books. In large library systems, logistics can be complicated. Another challenge is that it's not always easy to find the right contact. But none of these are barriers, but they do shape how we approach the work. Next slide, please. So the next step is obviously scaling this more intentionally. We're going to keep expanding and strengthening partnerships across more libraries. We'll keep increasing visibility through collaborations with media and influencers. And like overall, we'll continue growing programming, including making this Spotlight on Ukraine initiative into annual national projects. Next slide, please. So all this work is about building that presence steadily and long term. If Ukrainian stories aren't on the shelves, they're missing from the conversation. And by sharing our knowledge and our expertise today, we help you, as our listeners and as our viewers, leave better informed, better connected, and better equipped with new ideas and new skills to act on them. And I think this is not a small thing. Thank you.
Anna, thank you so much for bringing us to the world of public libraries, how they function. It was so insightful. We have certain comments, and we're about to start our Q&A session. So I will make a small announcement to give a chance to our speakers and our audience to prepare their questions as well while I'm doing this announcement. Important part of this event was also to discuss that readers are actually crucial part of the resistance, because if books are not read, they are not living their best lives. So if you are reading Ukrainian books and have this urge, maybe you would like to do a bit more, we created simple, short, practical step-by-step guide where you can know how exactly you can enhance and bring more chances to spread the word about Ukrainian literature. And you don't have to be influencer. You can be just ordinary passionate reader. So after this event, we will email you this guide. So please look forward and feel free to share with your friends, with your colleagues, with other passionate readers, because as amazing translators, talented copy editors, agencies that promote and distribute you as a reader as also extremely valuable in this process. So now I hope that give you a chance to read. We had, we already had one question, and it was for Teresa. There is a question, why Ukrainska Pravda use term Russo-Ukrainian War and not Russian-Ukrainian War or Russian-Ukrainian War? It's pretty interesting. Teresa, please.
Well, I hadn't actually thought about this. We just say Russo-Ukrainian War because that's what we ourselves read in the media, in the Anglophone media, and it's spelled with a small W. Yes, I'm not saying that it never appears on our website, but I'd say that it's more common for us to say Russia's war against Ukraine. But I haven't really had time to read your argument as to why this is a bad thing. So I promise you I will read it carefully and bring it back to my colleagues and we'll have a chat about this. But it's important to remember, I think, sometimes that things hit differently to different people. For example, the word occupier, which is, it sounds really like a horrible negative word to Ukrainians. Actually, occupier it can just mean somebody who's occupying a property in English. It doesn't sound bad, but we don't use it because we don't even use it in that sense because we don't want to upset anybody, even though it doesn't have that negative connotation in English. I mean, sometimes I've tried to explain to people this actually doesn't have a negative connotation in English. Another example was we don't say, for example, Eastern, Southern, Western, Northern Ukraine, but Ukraine's East, Ukraine's South, Ukraine's North. And because people feel that it sounds wrong, it gives the wrong message. But it doesn't actually, to an English speaking person, it makes no difference. They're just synonyms. But because it seems offensive to our colleagues, we don't use that. So I'm going to go back to my colleagues and ask about the Russo-Ukrainian War, and I promise I will
Thank
think
you so
more
much.
about that. Thank you.
We have a question to Anna. When you refer to libraries, are you also including university libraries and academic libraries in that category?
No, not yet. I'm talking about the American public libraries, first of all, because academic libraries, they are a different category and they require a different approach. And for example, working with academic libraries would require recommending books that would be tied to a specific part of a curriculum, for example, or a specific project or a specific research area. So it's not that easy. And unfortunately, I lack experience and expertise in that field.
That's work academic publishers often do. We often do such course integration things where we suggest titles we translated to certain courses. And
Exactly, yeah.
usually academic publishers work hard and a lot on this. Thank you for sharing. You also can raise a hand, unmute yourself and ask your question. That's also an option. And our speakers are also more than welcome to ask. I think we have covered all the questions from our chat.
I just want to comment, Oksana. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but she left a comment that she would love to connect afterwards about working with the local library. And I answered that she could send me an email. So I left my email address. So just paying your attention to it.
Yeah, and we have an invitation from Katarina to become an ambassador for Chapter Ukraine. Maybe Katarina, you can tell a bit more what ambassadors usually are doing.
And it's what actually I try to say. Become our volunteer, receive our toolkits from us, guides, and our best practices, and adopt your library or bookstore where you live, and build relationship with this library. And actually, Razom soon, it's exclusive information. Razom soon will announce small grants for community building. So you can apply for a grant, have a little bit of money for this, and host some event. We will also help providing information and material for this, and we can do this.
That's amazing, actually. I hope you will have a bunch of enthusiastic volunteers and ambassadors after this event. And I also hope we'll be having other meetings because this conversation was so insightful. It's so nice to meet, to see faces and discuss different angles of the same work. And it's absolute pleasure on as Katarina sharing some exclusive information. I'm also glad to share that in our press, we are trying to do more open access. As resources is indeed a crucial obstacle in order to get certain title. Therefore, we started having more books about Ukrainian translation, mostly non-fiction, of course, because fiction is not so often. I don't recall any fiction in open access. So any interested reader can just download and read for free certain book. And also any educator, uh, activist, volunteer can get this book incorporated into curriculum for no cost. But also there will be option to buy paper copy. So the soonest release of work like that is book Entrapment. Slow House by Olga Bertelsen. It's very interesting because it's combined literary history and security studies because Dr. Olga Bertelsen is an expert in intelligence, counterintelligence, and security studies, and she was born in Slow House. So it's also her family history. And in English language world, it will be first comprehensive history of Slow House, where you will be able to read stories of people who were living there, but also how they were interrogated, which types of violence was used, and how this violence was methodical and for which purposes, and how these methods are still used for Ukrainian intelligentsia and to impact the covert actions on Ukrainian culture. So it will be an open access. And other important open access release, it will be handbook of Ukrainian literature, where we also amplify this effort to gather all translations, to provide something more reliable than Wikipedia, to get basic info starting from Ukrainian folklore and to the full scale of war literature. And it also will be possible to read in open access. So it will be very interesting to check the impact, downloads, incorporation, quotations, and I hope that will give us a new experience, new insights to exchange, to talk. And can Ukraine's 5-year chairing in UNESCO can help to promote Ukrainian literature? It's a very interesting question. I have no idea. I do not have expertise how UNESCO work. Maybe if Iran have expertise, can give some insights or other speakers.
I'm not sure about what UNESCO involvement can do with literature, but I, without saying too much, know that the Culture Ministry is doing a lot of work behind the scenes right now to bring Ukrainian literature to a new level of recognition in 2026, 2027, and I'm very excited about it. So yeah, that's all I can say, like from what I've heard as a journalist. But yeah, there's things going on. I don't think UNESCO is involved when it comes to literature, but things are being done behind the scenes.
Amazing. We ended up with insights, and it's truly inspiring, and how sustainable each of you are and how long are working. And also, you are all so young and you will be working a few decades more. It's a pure inspiration, honestly.
There's another question in the chat. Is this just for Anglophone countries?
Oh yeah, a little. You have to scroll up a little.
I think you've been just talking about the United States, haven't you?
Yes. Well, me in particularly, yes. I was talking about the United States. Yeah.
But probably ambassadors for chapter Ukraine, they can work in different countries, not.
Yeah, so we have language versions, English, French, Spanish, I'm already forgetting, German, and soon it's going to be in 2 months, Portuguese, Polish, Swedish, and Italian. So each of these countries, we need people on the ground help us actually use this website and use this project and connect with the libraries and with the bookstores there.
Maria, can I chime in from UNWLA perspective? This is Anna Berezniak. I'm sorry, I'm going to be without video, but I would like to add to this, to the answer of this, to this question. UNWLA is member of the World Federation of the Ukrainian Women's Organizations, and we can actually bring this question up to them and see if there are any active Ukrainian women's organizations in other European countries that would be willing to participate in this initiative as well. So that's a definitely great question and a great area for growth for all of our projects and all our organizations. So yeah, let's keep this rolling. Thank you.
And as we know, 75, for example, 75% of audience chapter Ukraine and Craft magazine is women, of course, and only 25 is unfortunately male audience. So yeah, women will do a real difference in a literary world and everywhere.
Absolutely. So if you get inspired and find links we shared useful, feel free to make some posts, share them on social media. Maybe your small audience will benefit from knowing about these initiatives. And we have a comment from Susan. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing your connection, bringing your ideas, you're contributing to this common aim. I believe that was extremely prolific conversation. We are looking forward to reading new translations, having other conversations to sum up our experience, build on it, and well, for success. It's pure inspiration and pure pleasure to have you all today. And there was one more question. We're always glad to have it. There are several book clubs in US, Ukrainian National Women League, Razom, others. Is there any way for the book clubs to connect?
Well, I don't know if that's going to be like a good idea, but I always say that if you read Ukrainian authors, if you talk about Ukrainian titles, doesn't really matter in Ukrainian or in translation. But as long as you talk about them, as long as you promote information about them, as long as you form clubs dedicated to specifically highlight those titles and authors, I mean, well, that's a great piece of news, and we shall continue doing that. For example, as I said, UNWLA Book Club specifically focuses on reading Ukrainian titles available in English translation. And we also invite to our book club sessions American or foreign specialists, experts on different topics. So, for example, so far we've had 3 sessions. We discussed Cassandra by Lesya Ukrainka. We opened our book club with that discussion in February, and we invited British professor William Blacker, and he was our guest speaker for the first session, and we spoke about truth, propaganda, everything that Lesya Ukrainka talks about in her prominent work, Cassandra. And then in March, we read Love Life by Oksana Lutsishina, and she was our guest speaker. We spoke about love, relationships, identity, self-discovery. For example, in April, our guest speaker, I'm sorry, her name slipped my mind, but she works, she does a lot of work in the sphere of economy and ecology, and we discussed the book Ecocide in Ukraine, the impact of Russian war on the
Just
Ukrainian
propaganda.
environment. Yes, yes, yes. And it was really, the discussion was really profound. We also record all of our sessions, so you're welcome to find links on our website, UNW website. We also have our YouTube channel, so we post everything there. You can also join us, subscribe, and watch every recording we have, and also join live.
Amazing. So we're so precise with timing, so efficient. I see that these people meet very tight deadlines. So thank you one more time for being a part of this resistance. I wish you a lot of strength and to the work.
Yeah, yeah. Let's keep this momentum going.
One last thing that I want to add from our side. Please be on the lookout for the email. We will send all the information following this meeting, and also we dropped link in the chat to sign up for a newsletter, because all these partnerships, all the toolkits that we were talking about, everything is going to be published and shared via newsletter with all of you and our members. And we always share updates and news as we move forward and new options and opportunities arise. So please, you're welcome to sign up for the newsletter. We will be happy to introduce and share news from all of our partners who are present here and more. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.